Kakadosh Boker Tov, we're going to continue with the Mishnah where it says Kalkala, the two dots. Sorry, the two dots on Kuf Mem Bet Amud Aleph, 142A1. The two dots where we said in the Mishnah that if you're allowed to take a Kalkala basket, and there's going to be a stone which is inside the basket. Okay? So the Gemara is going to ask, Vamai, why are you allowed to take this basket? The Kalkala is going to become a basis for something which is prohibited, which means since you have on the stone, if you're going to now come and you're going to move it, it's going to be a subitul. You're not allowed to. This entire basket should be mukse because of the stone inside of it. So the Gemara answers, says, here we're talking about the kalkala melea perot. This basket is full of fruit. So again, we're on the two dots on Kuf Ben Bet Amud Aleph. We just said that why is this basket not considered mukse because of the stone inside of it? So we answered because since the basket is full of fruit, that's why it's not mukse. So ask the Gemara, he says, 1 second, why don't I throw out all the fruit, throw out the stone, and then I'm going to pick up the fruit and only carry the fruit? Why am I permitted to carry this stone as well? That's what the Gemara is asking. So the Gemara answers, like Rabbi Elazar Marav, we're talking about the fruits that if you throw them on the floor, it's going to get dirty. So since it's going to get dirty, it's going to be prohibited. Okay, what do you mean prohibited? Sorry, you're not obligated to come and to throw it out. Hachanami, so to here, we're talking about if you're going to throw it out, it's going to become all bad. Here gives an example, for example, tanim, figs, or tutim anavim, or grapes, or strawberries, things like that, that if you throw it to the ground, it's going to become all disgusting. So therefore, you don't have to throw it out. There's no problem. So ask the Gemara, says, fine, but just move it around until you're able to throw the stone by itself out of the basket. Meaning start moving and shifting around in the basket until you have the stone revealed. Then tilt out the stone. We're talking about a sal, a basket that it has a hole. The stone itself is acting as a wall. So let me see if I have a picture of it. But technically, I'm sure you could imagine it. It's not that difficult. Here. The stone itself becomes the wall of the basket or of this, bucket, whatever you want to call it exactly. Okay, so that way you have the actual stone there. So therefore, okay, that's why he says you don't have to actually move it or you don't have to take it out because it became the wall. So since it became the wall, there's no problem whatsoever. Next, we said metaltalin trumat me'ah with teorah and with chulin. So you're allowed to carry trumat me'ah with teorah and with chulin. Amar Rav Chasta says, Rav Chasta, lo shanu ela sheteorah lemata utme'ah lemala. That's only talking about when the trumat teorah is on the bottom and the trumat me'ah is above. And you need the trumat teorah. So therefore, you cannot come and take the trumat me'ah biyadayim from the teorah in order to get to the bottom one. However, the opposite. What happens if you have the trumat teorah above and the trumat me'ah below? Shakile l'teorah v'shavik l'tme'ah. You're going to take it and you're only going to take the pure one. And you leave behind the not pure one. So ask the Gemara, v'chi teorah l'matanami, l'shtim liktinu. He says, 1 second, if that's the case, also the opposite way. If you have the trumat teorah on the bottom, throw off the trumat me'ah on the top, and then just carry the bottom one, which is the trumat teorah. Answers the Gemara, the same answer. We're talking about perot, which will get dirty if you're going to throw it on the ground. So Meitvei, we're going to ask the following question. Basically, there's no difference. So to you, Rav Chasta, this is actually a good question against Rav Chasta. So Rav Chasta is going to answer you, matniti in our Mishnah is a tzor kufo, right? It's for the body, which means you actually wanted to eat the truma. The Braita is only talking about the tzorch mikomo, that you just needed the space. So therefore, since you only needed the space, that's why Chachamim only permitted you by taking the good truma, but you have to leave the other truma behind. So says the Gemara, so why are you coming and putting it that you need it tzor gufo? So Rava says, because the Mishnah is actually like him. The Tani Seifa was the Seifa of the Mishnah was, Ma'ot Shelakar, when you have money on top of a pillow. And I had it to no float. You shake the pillow and then it falls off. The Amar Rabbi Yochanan says, that's only if it's going to be tzorah gufo, that you actually need it. You need the pillow. But if you don't need the pillow, you just need the space, you could carry it when it's still on top of it. Which means that if you're going to shake it off, the place is not going to be panu anymore. But the seifa, so since the seifa was also talking about tzorah gufo, so to the Reisha is also talking about tzorah gufo. So basically, the Mishnah is more accurate, like this pshat of Rav Chasdan. That's why he actually changed it this way. Okay? Rabbi Yehuda Omer af ma'alin. Rabbi Yehuda says you could also annul it with 101. You remember we said by other isurim, for example, meat and milk or non-kosher, things like that, it's always batil b'shishim. It's always 60. Here you need 101 to annul it. So ask the Gemara V'amai why? How come it again? You're fixing something. Right? So Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Eliezer Sfirale. Rabbi Yehuda, he also Rabbi Eliezer. The Amar, but he says, Truma ba'ina machta. Truma, right? It's not going to be meurav. The Truma is we learned on the Mishnah. Se'at truma shenafla lefachot mimea v'nidmeu. When you have a se'av truma that fell, right? Lefachot mimea, to less than mea of chulin. V'nidmeu, right? And now it became nidmeu. So it says, v'nafal mina meduma. And what happens is that it fell from the Sarov Makom Acher to another place. Rabbi Eliezer says, Medamat ki Trumat Vadai. Right? It's going to become Asur, just like Truma Vadait. Chachamim say, no, Ena Meduma Medamea. It's not going to be Medamea. Ela Lefi Cheshbon, but only according to the Cheshbon. So says the Gemara, Eimar Deshamale Lechumra. This is only if it's going to be Lechumra. Lekula Mishamale. But does it help also the Kula? So he says, so Ela Huda Marke Bishimon, but rather he holds like Rabbi Shimon. It's not as we learned to the Mishnah. Se'at Truma shenafla leme'ah. If you have a se'av Truma that falls into 100, so if one se'av Truma that falls into 100 of chulin, ve'lo speak like biat shenafla achere, but you didn't have enough in order to pick it up until another one of chulin fell in. So that is a surah. The entire thing is a sur. Because even though right now you do have enough to be mevatel, but it's not permitted because it only fell into 100. Rabbi Shimon says it's going to be permitted. Okay. Now the reasoning of Rabbi Shimon is because he's holding that this se'at truma that was actually there is by itself, and therefore it's not mixed with everything else. Therefore, the second se'ah that falls into the 100 of se'ah of chulin is batel. So therefore, we see that according to Rabbi Shimon, he's actually explaining that it's like by itself, even the kula, not only lechumra. So says the Gemara, Umimai. Why do you say that this is the reasoning of Rabbi Shimon? Dilma hatam over there, what is a machloket? The Tarakama Sava is the Tarakama holds Afakav than Afu Bezachase, even though it fell one after another. It's like it fell in one shot. And each one fell into 50. Rabbi Shimon Savar, and Rabbi Shimon holds no, Kamaita Batil Bemea. The first one was already Batel in 100. But the second one is now going to become Batel in 101. Because since the first one became chulin because it was already batel, so it's mitzaref to the 100 to annul the second one. But he also like Shimon Lazar. The time we learned to the right, Shimon Lazar says, you could put your eyes in one side and then eat from another side, which means you could put your mind inside on one side and then you're permitted to eat from the other side. So since you're still permitted to eat from the other side, so therefore there's no problem whatsoever. So even if you do pick it up, it's not considered a tikkun. And that's why it's going to be permitted. So says the Gemara, does Rabbi Shimon ben Lazar holds like Rabbi Yehuda? Okay? He says, he argues on it. The time was learned to the right, Rabbi Yehuda, right? He says, Rabbi Yehuda says, you could actually permit it in 101. And it's not asur because of mitaken on Shabbat. So Rabbi Shimon ben Lazar, so you see, Rabbi Shimon ben Lazar is not the same shita as Rabbi Yehuda. So says the Gemara, you're right. Rabbi Yehuda different Rabbi Shimon ben Lazar. The shita of Rabbi Yehuda is even more lenient than Rabbi Shimon ben Lazar. Because Rabbi Shimon ben Lazar tells you to fix it only by designating it in your mind another part into it. But he says it's asur to do it with your hands. Rabbi Yehuda comes and you're actually allowed to take it out. It's not considered mitaken. By the way, this halachot all apply on Shabbat as well, to do with the concept of are you allowed to annul isunim on Shabbat? Because maybe you're mitaken, you're fixing something. So this is all the same concept. Says the Mishnah, okay? So the Mishnah says as follows. Ha'even shal pi chavit. When you have a stone on top of a chavit, matal tzida v'inofelet. You could actually put it, you're permitted to move it on the side, and then it falls off. So you're allowed to tilt the barrel, and then the stone is going to fall off. Ha'ita ben ha'chaviyot, if it was going to be in between the barrels, magbia u'matel tzida v'inofelet. So then you're allowed to pick it up, the entire barrel, right? And then it's going to tilt it. So basically, if it's just here, you tilt it, it falls. If it's between barrels, so you can't tilt it, you pick it up, and then you tilt it. Okay? Magbia, he says, okay, fine. Ma'ot shalkar, when you're talking about money on top of a pillow, you just shake it off and then it falls off. If it had something disgusting on it, you're allowed to clean it off with a smartut. But you're not allowed to put water on it. If it was of leather, you're allowed to put water until it just goes off. So we were actually just learning these halachot and the halachot of in the morning to do with libun, by cleaning. So Amar Avuna Amarav, says the Gemara. Amar Avuna Amarav, says Avuna Amarav, this is only if you forgot it there. But if you purposely place it there before Shabbat, it becomes a basis to the varasur. This is very, very important to the halachot of basis. Basis means that it becomes a base to that which you put it on top of it. Now, a basis only becomes only when you did it purposely. If you forgot it, it does not become a basis. Okay? Aita ben ha'chaviyot, if it was in between the barrels. Mantana dechol heicha ikar isur ve'etera be'etera tachim isur tachinu. Who's the tan of the Mishnah that holds that anytime that you have an isur and a eter, you're only going to be be'etera tachina. You can only deal with the eter and not the isur. So the time was we learned to the Mishnah. If you're going to separate kitnion, like different types of beans on Yom Tov, but Shammai says, you separate the food and then you eat. Bet Hillel says, you do it normally. Whether it's with your chest or in a tamchui, in a big, like a plate. The time we learned on the Braita, that's only if you have more food than psolet, than refuse. If you have more refuse, according to everybody, you separate the good. Okay, if you have more psolet, according to everybody, you do it this way. Right? So therefore, it comes out according to this. We see that according to the tirchata muktzeh is mirubei. That's why you're supposed to do the more heter and not the muktzeh. Okay, so in our case, right, you're supposed to be litroch beheter, which is moving the tiltula chavit and let the stone come off. So our Mishnah is like Rabbi Shimon Gamliel, not like Tanakama. So ask the Gemara, ve'ahacha dechiyochem lo psolet danu. So 1 second, here the chavit, the barrel of wine, has much more ochel than psolet. The psolet is the stone on top of the barrel of the wine. Here you have the barrel of the wine. It's much more ochel. So says the Gemara, you're right. Came on by the mishkal, if you wanted to take part of the wine, lo mishtake leyayin and the shake le'lev, and you wouldn't take the wine until you have to take off the stone. So it's considered psolim rubela ochel. So the stone is considered more quantity than the wine. Because even though you've got a huge barrel of wine, but the stone is on top. If I don't take off the stone, I can't get to the barrel. So it's considered that the stone is much more in quantity than the barrel. Okay? Haita ben ha'chaviyot, if it was between the barrels, magbia, you pick it up. Tanya, we learned to write Rabbi Yosef, and Rabbi Yosef says, Haita chavit munachat be'otzad, o shayu kle zechuchi munachim tachtea. If the chavit was placed on the otzar, okay, I have a chavit, and it's placed on the otzar that I have a whole bunch of chaviyot. O shayu kle zechuchit munachim tachtea, or I have kle zechuchit which are placed in it. Okay, magbia lamakom acher. So you pick it up, you move it somewhere else, you tilt it, and then you just take off the right, you take the chavit from it. Then you put it back. Okay, that's what you're going to do. Now we're going to speak about the money. Amar of Barashi says, Barashi, Amar Rav in the name of Rav, that's only if you forgot it. But if you placed it there, right, the meniach, if you placed it there, right? You place it there, right? Nasa basis of the varasur becomes a basis of the varasur. So Amar Rabbi Yochanan says, Rabbi Yochanan, lo shanu letzor gufo. That's only if it's going to be tzor gufo. Aval letzor mekomo, but if it's going to be tzor mekomo, metaltelo ve'odan alav. Then you could actually carry it when it's still there. We also taught Chia barav midifti. That's only if it's going to be the gufo. Metaltelo ve'odan alav. You're allowed to be metaltel et zeh, and then it's going to be on top of it. Okay? Ma'ot shalakar minaer. So then we're talking about money, which is on the kar, which is on the pillow. You're allowed to shake it. Am Ravoshe says, Shachach anneki b'chatzer maniach alav alea kikar o tinok metaltela. If you forgot a wallet in a chatzer, you place on top of it a loaf of bread or a child, and then you're going to be metaltel with it to a place which is going to be ishtamer, to a place which is going to be watched over. Okay? So then what do? You put this on top of it. So Amar of Yitzchak says of Yitzchak, Shachach lebeina lechatzer, if you also forgot a levena brick, also maniach alea kakar o tinok metaltela. So Amar of Yehuda bar Shila, Amar of Avasi, says of Yehuda bar Shila, Amar of Avasi, Pam achat shachu diskaya, which is a sack shel or, like a sackcloth of, like a bag of leather. Melea maot bisratya, right, full of money, in the middle of the Reshut Rabim. Imagine, in the middle of the Reshut Rabim, boom, they forgot a big bag of money in the Sratya. They came to ask Rabbi Yochanan, and he told them, put a child or a loaf of bread on top of it and then carry it. So Amar Muzuta says, there's only if you forgot it. Okay, but if you place it there b'Shabbat, so they didn't permit you to do this. Vashi says, no, even if you forgot it, you're also not allowed to do that. The only time they permitted a loaf of bread or a child is only for a deceased. That if a deceased person came and passed away, and he's in the sun, so you could put a child or a loaf of bread on top of him, and then you move him. But other than that, you're not allowed to. So Abaye manach kappa akipe. Abaye used to put a kaf of omarim, of tevuah, in order to move it because of the kaf. Rabba manasakina bar Yona. Rabba used to put used to put with a sakin ben Yuna in order to carry it. So Amar of Yosef says, "Kama charifa shmatata dedareteki." How much is it so important to pay attention to the teachings of the youngsters? Because this is only if you forgot it. But whoever told you to talk about lechatchila even? Whoever told you to talk about lechatchila? So Abaye says, he loved the Adam Chashuv. It wasn't that it was an important person. Kappa kipa lamale. Why do you need to do it? You could lie down on top of it. Right? So since he's an Adam Chashuv, he has to be machmir on himself even more. But if not, technically he could have lied down on it and then he could have moved it. So Rava says, Anna, you love if it wasn't for Adam Chashuv also, Sakina Bar Yonah Lamali, why do I need the knife at all? Chazim, so you could eat the Bar Yonah live. Meaning, what do you mean live? Not alive. Meaning that without any cooking, that raw, right? Which means that I didn't need it. But again, I'm an important person, so I have to be machmir, and that's why I'm doing this. But really, Bemet, I didn't need it. Tamad de chazilum, so that's only you could eat it the way that it is. But if it's not chazilum, so you can eat it the way that it is raw. So he was like a Yehuda. The Amar Rava l'Shamir Rava told his Shamash, Tevuli bar Avza, roast for me a bar Avza, ushtim shunra, and throw the intestines to a cat. So you see from here that he was like a Shimon. It's mutal tel basar, right? That was already from yesterday fitting for a human being to consume. Why? Because right now you could actually throw it to an animal. So that should be enough. Let's continue until the Mishnah. So it says Kuf Mem Gimel Mud Aleph. So it says the Gemara Hatam given the Misrach, right? Since the Be'aim, right, which is basically the intestines, are going to be Masriach, Datei Lavem Etmol. So you already had it in mind yesterday. Hachenam Mistabra, and it's also Mistaber. The Rava Krab Yudah, the Rava holds like Krab Yudah. The Daresh Rava Bezrava was Doresh, Ishalo Tiknes Beta Etzim, Nitol Meonud. A woman could not go into a storage place where they have the wood in order to take from them wood, right, the makel, to start stoking the coals. And if it already broke on Shabbat, you're not allowed to put it in the fire on Yom Tov. Why? Because you could only put it into the shivrei kelim, you could only put a kli inside of the fire, but not shivrei kelim, something that broke from a kli. Okay? You guys want to continue until the end of the perek, until the bottom of the page?
Yeah, go ahead.
Let's go.
Fine. So it says the Mishnah. Bet Shammai Omrim, Bet Shammai says, okay, Mishnah Kuf Mem Gimel Mud Aleph. Ma'avidim al shulchan atzamot uklipin. You're allowed to take off the table whether we're talking about atzamot, bones, or klipin, or pits, or like the peels. You're allowed to take this. So this is the halachot of the olive pits, of how do you call it, pipitas, the sunflower seeds, like the shell, all those things. Bet Hillel אומרים, Bet Hillel say, מסלק את הטבלה כולה, you just have to take off the entire table, because it's muktzeh. ומנערה, and then you just shake it off. מעבירים לפני השולחן פירורים פחות מכזית, you're allowed to take off the table different crumbs which have less than a kazait, ושיער של אפונים, or תמילים of אפונים of like beans, ושיער עדשים, or adashim lentils, okay, even though you cannot eat it that way. נשומח על בהמה, but animals can eat it. ספוג, a sponge, אם יש לו אור, right, beta chiza, if it's got a handle, which is a beta chiza, which means it's got a handle, okay, of leather, you're allowed to use it on Shabbat. And if not, you're not allowed to use it on Shabbat. That's why you'll realize that the Shabbat sponges, they always usually have a handle, right? It's not only just the handle, right? It's an extra heter that it's got a handle, okay? But anyway, you could actually carry it on Shabbat, but it's not mekabel tuma. Says the Gemara, Amar of Nachman, says of Nachman, Anu en lanu ela bet Shammai kerab Yehuda ubet Hillel kerab Shimon. Says we always somech that our Mishnah is always teaching that bet Shammai always go like Rabbi Yehuda, which is machmir and muktzeh, and therefore he says you're not allowed to come and carry these spits or peels and things like that. And bet Hillel holds like Rabbi Shimon. Okay, next, ma'avirim lifnei shulchan perurim. You're allowed to take off the table perurim. Okay, Mesele Rabbi Yochanan, this house of Yochanan, Dam Rabbi Yochanan says of Yochanan, perurim shemem kezait asul of dam biyad. Perurim that do not have a kezait, you're not allowed to get rid of it with your hands. That means you're not allowed to throw out bread, even if it's going to be, if it's not going to have a kezait. Okay? It means basically bread you're not supposed to throw away. If you have to, you double wrap it or things like that, but you never throw away bread. Okay? Sar shalafunim, mani, who is this? Bishimoni, it's a bishimon. He doesn't hold the muktzah. So Ima said, let's say the sefer then. Sfog, if you have a sponge, so let's say to wash the dishes, you're allowed to use it, and if it doesn't have a handle, you're not allowed to use it. It's called Zekab Yuda. Because Rabbi Yuda said, so the Gemara answers as usual, this even Rabbi Shimon also is Modeh. Why? And Rabbi both agree that means when you're going to pick up a sponge, it's inevitable that it's not going to squeeze. So since it's going to squeeze, it's psikre shah, that means it's inevitable. So even Rabbi Shimon that said the Vashan Mikaven is mutar, here it's like you have kavanah to do it because obviously it's going to become a sur. So says the Gemara, Hani garinim the tamri ermayata. These garinim, the pits of these dates, the Armenian dates, you're allowed to move it. Oil v'chazyan agav iman. But since it was already with the mother before, I mean that since by the date itself it was fitting to move. So tonight you can move it because of the it's a byproduct. With parsateh it was sur, but if it's going to be ganim parsim, it's going to be a sur because they're muktzeh because of nolad. Because in the beginning of the Shabbat, it was part of the pri. And now when it's separate, it's only ma'achal be'ema, it's not ma'achal adam. So he says in the first case, right, even it was never fitting for human being. It was only fitting for animals. Shmuel metaltalehu gavrifta. Shmuel used to carry it with bread. Okay, which means that let's say you would have bread on the table, so you would carry the entire thing with bread. That's why if you have, let's say, one olive, you could have it with all the other olive pits, and you can move the entire plate or the entire thing with that one olive, or one sunflower seed, and that way you move the entire thing with the one sunflower seeds. So then we have a siman just to remember the rest. Okay, Shagam Shabbat siman. Shmuel etamesh. Shmuel goes according to reasoning. Dam Shmuel said, "Dam kutzuko bepav." As according to him, you can do whatever you want with bread. And this is actually the halacha. Yeah, this is the halacha. You could do whatever you want with bread. So here too, you're using the bread for your own necessities. So Rabba metaltelu agav lekana demaya. Rabba was metaltel agav the sefel mayim. Right, he used to be metaltel. They used to take it. Ravun berev Yeshua avi like a graf sharei. He used to do like a graf sharei. So Amar le Ravashi lemeimar says Ravashi tameimar v'chiosin graf sharei lechatchila. Are you allowed to do a graf sharei lechatchila? So the right means you're not allowed to make like this thing of excrement lechatchila for this. So Rosh Hashanah tzadik leu bilishne. Rosh Hashanah used to throw the garinim with his tongue right over the table. Meaning he wouldn't put it on the table at all. He used to throw it out. Papa used to throw it behind the bed. He used to turn around, he used to throw it behind. With his mouth. So again, in all these ways, that means it's not going to be muktzeh, but you're doing it with your mouth. Meaning you put it in your mouth, and now from your mouth, you're spitting it out, so there's no muktzeh. Okay, again, these are all different reasons for muktzeh. Obviously, halakha, we would have to see halakha maseh for each case, but this is the main yisodot. So, Bezat Hashem, tomorrow we continue with Kuf Mem Gimel Amud Beh.